And we're getting ready to take on an issue that is changing in America, and that is the issue of alcohol. I've read a very important article where the sales of alcohol in this country were dropping for the first time since its legalization. And I think, though there are no commercials that I have seen on TV promoting getting away from alcohol, social media is loaded with information about the dangers of alcohol to the brain. Would you address that a little?
Well, this is great because this is where social media is great. When we've got knowledge, we've got power. And I mean, just this morning I was reading a study about how, the problems that alcohol causes in the gut. And there's been so much, and that's just one, and increases your chance of cancer. We know there's so much research now. We know that alcohol changes our physiology. And alcohol drunk with the wrong reasons makes it worse. So literally that the alcohol substance, the actual substance, our mindset will make it even more dangerous in our body or not. So in other words, your perception is king, how your mindset is around your thoughts, what you're thinking. So if you're drinking to suppress an emotion, you'll have more damage in your body. If you're drinking to not face something, if you're drinking to escape, those are very big. The mind is 99%, as I've been saying. So then the impact of that alcohol is going to be 100 times worse than if you're just having self-medicating, drinking for the wrong reasons. A social drink now and then, it's not going to hurt you. But it's the way that alcohol has been, it's insidious. When I talk about addiction, it's not a disease. And alcohol as addiction, and there's science, a lot of science behind that. Alcoholism is often sold as a disease that you can't control. The minute you tell someone they can't control something, they can't control it because they wire in a network that they think they can't control it. So the first thing we have to break is that if people have got caught up in using alcohol in an addictive way, is to recognize that that's not who you are. It's not a pattern for the rest of your life. It does change the wiring in the brain and the body. It does have an impact. It does increase vulnerability because the nature of alcohol is counter to the way that our biology works. So small amounts our body can deal with, large amounts going to mess up your body. But you add the mindset to that, you make it even worse. So addiction is using something to suppress a toxic thought, a bunch of intrusive thoughts that you just can't deal with that are just flying all over your head, so you're looking for something to numb. So from that sense, that's not a good thing to do, and that lands up creating these changes. And we're told that it's hijacked the addictive pathway in the brain. Your brain doesn't have an addictive pathway. Your brain can't think. Your brain doesn't generate. Your brain simply stores data. The thing that's generating is the mind. So the conscious mind has the addictive pathway and codes that into the brain. And if one is drinking alcohol for the wrong reasons, that is a pathway that's set up associated with the alcohol, and therefore then the entire circuitry, mind, brain, body, the whole psychoneurobiology, that's impacted and changed. So I'm stressing the mind is more important. Social drinking now and then is not going to hurt anyone. But if you really messed up and you really aren't dealing with your stuff, and all of us are messed up, but if you're not dealing with your stuff, if you're not processing, if you're not getting in that garden and dealing with it, that alcohol is going to make it worse, and your body's going to be more vulnerable to the impact of the alcohol. So your chances of increasing the impact of what alcohol could cause, from cancer to you name it, is increased dramatically by how you're managing your mind. Now, once people manage their mind, I mean, I work with people with alcohol addiction and so on. Once they start managing their mind and finding the source of why am I drinking in this way? Why do I have this mindset when I drink? Why am I reaching for that drink? Once you find that, then you rewire that, you reconceptualize that, you go to the process beyond, the what next. The desire to drink changes. The way they drink changes. The way they think while they drink changes. While you think while you drink is very important. For every breath that you breathe in, that's an alcohol. That is, talk about breathing now, just to give you an analogy. Those are oxygen molecules. Now we breathe to keep us alive, we know. But if I'm worked up and I'm breathing, do you know that my worked upness, that's mind stuff, it's thoughts, it attaches itself to that breath. So I breathe in more trauma. I breathe in more worked up. I get more worked up. So even when we're breathing, that's how fundamental mind is, Bishop Jakes, is not just the alcohol, but even while breathing. If you worry about getting Alzheimer's, you increase your chance of getting Alzheimer's by I think it's somewhere between 68 and 94%. Our perception, our mind is driving all of it. So I know we diversified, but I try to link it back
No,
to
it's all
the alcohol. Yes, it's dangerous.
It's all good for us to know. You know, when you start talking about the stimuli that creates a response of alcoholism, one of those stimuli is rejection.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Knowing how to deal with rejection and not allowing a person to pronounce a death sentence on you just because they rejected you, the job rejected you, the loan company rejected you, but most importantly, your spouse or your date or your children. We're living in a time now that children are writing off their entire families. Sometimes they've been assaulted. They've got good reason to have complexities and things like that. Other times we write things, hard things off so easily. That it diminishes the value that you later need in life. You write off your children, and then there's nobody to check on you in the hospital. You write off your children, and Mother's Day becomes a day of misery for you. You write off your children, and there's no laughter in your house, and there's a sadness inside of you as if you were worthless, or if somebody writes you off, their decision to write you off will often leave you feeling worthless. How do we manage that sort of thing?
So you're touching on something so important that's also been around since the beginning of time, where problems have occurred between families, but because of social media and the age we live in now, it's much more, we are much more aware of all of these things, the alcohol and everything. Okay, so the rejection, all these things that there's many reasons why people want to cut off people in their lives, and we gave the narcissistic explanation earlier on for someone who's being abused, whatever. The key thing here is, if you don't know yourself, people don't know themselves anymore. We're so in the performative hustle culture. This is who you should be. This is what the church says you should be. This is so externalized, as I said earlier on, until we focus back on the internal. When we know who we are and we are comfortable with being sad and crying, being honest and open, there's tolerance, because everyone's messing up. You know, everyone, yes, some people, maybe you don't have to, as you said, if someone's impacting you and abusing you, you have to be safe and you have to protect yourself and that kind of thing. But we have to work on ourselves. So it does start with ourselves. It does start with really understanding, maybe you do create that space of isolation. But because of, if I may for a moment, with parents, if because of the fact that of the bond of a parent and a child, it's so big and so strong that, and then abuse happens, it's so distorted. So that network is in the brain, we can actually even see, and in the body we'll see the changes in the hormones, in the telomeres, which are the ends of DNA. I've done research with telomeres showing how they change, and they you can lose biological age. You can be, your organs can be so damaged from trauma and things like that you actually have to go to a period of separation, etc., to heal the physical while you heal the emotional. The thing though is that bond is so tight that as the distortion happens and this distorted network affecting telomeres and all these things is built in, and you get all the reactions, there's a very weird mix of a realization when you do cut off of, wow, I've got a sense of peace now, I can start to heal. But then you're grieving. So you're holding these, it feels like sorrow and relief at the same time. And we don't know how to deal with that because we don't talk about it enough. It's okay to have sorrow and relief. What I often say to my clients and my patients when I was still practicing, and what I say to myself, what I write about, and what we may have read about and heard, is the fact that you can hold what seem to be contradictory emotions at the same time. So when I can accept that I am grieving because this child or this parent has chosen a pathway of whatever, and it's so unnatural and it's broken and they're reacting, whatever that looks like, I can grieve that. And I can grieve and say, they're doing that obviously for their because of, everyone's got a because of. And I can see all of that, but at the same time, it's impacted me. I'm destroyed or whatever. I'm just giving an example. I'm sad, I'm depressed, I'm anxious all the time. We can hold both of those at the same time. And even when we're healing, we can hold both of those. So as we as we move into a point of potentially going no contact for a while, it doesn't mean it has to be that way forever. Sometimes it does have to be if it's an abusive situation and the other person doesn't do the work. If the other person doesn't do the work, you're not safe. You have to, but if they do the work, and what very often happens is once you start doing the work on yourself, you change, and that very often is a sign to people see that, and then they start to do the work on themselves and they change. But while that's happening, there's this tremendous conflict. So there's a network that's the bond of a parent and a child or whatever. Then there's the network of, on top of that, that's this distorted network of this relationship that's gone wrong. Then there's this decision, which is another thought network on top of it. So it's becoming very complicated now of I have to heal, I have to disconnect. And now that then all of this meshed up together generates this combination of sorrow and relief at the same time. And there's this calling and this aching, and therefore it's a process, and you may ache for the rest of your life. You learn to, some things we just learn to have, we learn to sort of live with them over time. Because if that person never changes, maybe they die by suicide, maybe they whatever.
Right.
The ache is there.
Right.
It'll stay there. But there's that sort of separation that happens. But this is where eternal perspective is so important, Bishop Jakes, because we need to realize that while we're on this earth, it's a drip in the ocean. There's a lot more than just on this earth. Whatever people believe, I know your followers do believe in eternal life, is that's so important. We have to see this in context. Whatever pain you're going through, whatever pain someone else is going through is a drip in the ocean. We have to do our best to make sure we are operating in love and finding who we are and releasing that perfect you in us. And even if it means a lot, doesn't mean the tears are going to stop. They're still going to come. You're still going to experience all the emotions. It's part of what you have to do as a human. But that's only a tiny drop in the ocean.